Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to Couch Conversations with the Doctors, where health is wealth. What night is it tonight? It is Monday night, and it is time for Couch Conversations with the Doctors. I want to say thank you guys for all being here on this evening. And as always, we're going to go around and we're going to introduce our esteemed guests. I'm going to ask if Dr. Hampton can do the introductions while I fix some technical difficulties. Okay, I'll
That'll
be
be
right
my
back. Go
pleasure.
right.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you guys for being here with us tonight. It's always a pleasure to just spend time with you guys on a Monday evening. So we'll start with introductions. Maybe I'll start by saying that I'm Dr. Hampton, a family and obesity doctor. I spent a lot of time on the south side of Chicago helping patients with Advocate Health, and love doing that. Love sharing messages of healing, and just trying to help people understand that their fork can probably be the best way to save their lives. So with that, I'll tee up Dr. Mason and hear his introduction.
Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. My name is Dr. Terry Mason. I am a happily retired urologist after spending nearly 26 years practicing urology in the city of Chicago and having the opportunity and the honor to serve as Commissioner of Health for the city of Chicago, as well as the Chief Operating Officer for the Cook County Health and Hospital System. So I've got a real broad base of experience in many different areas, and I'm hopeful that some of that experience will be something that will be helpful to help us tonight as we have our couch conversation.
Absolutely. I love being on the couch, and happy you guys are on the couch with us. I just noticed it's all men. When Nikki disappears, a man show. A man.
Nikki's working on getting some of the sin. The link.
That's right. That's cool.
The link. So
She's still working on it. Okay.
Yeah, we wouldn't be here without Nikki, even though she's not here. So that's the point.
You better know that. That's right. So we'll move on to let. In fact, I'll just let you, Joseph, to share your introduction as well.
Joe Harrington had a real great career. Worked in several fields. Worked briefly in mental health, behavioral health, and education. But most of my work was in public health and healthcare. I worked at 3 hospitals. Worked at both the city and state health departments. I actually worked as an assistant commissioner under Dr. Terry Mason when he was commissioner of health. Left the city health department, went to the state health department, where I was the regional health officer for Cook County and an administrative law judge. So just glad to be here. Glad to have this discussion and looking forward to spending some time with my colleagues.
Absolutely. And I want to do a shout out to Linda Johnson, who's saying good evening, and Connie Taylor saying good evening to everyone, and Dr. Miller, would you do the honor of introducing yourself?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. James Miller. I am a retired internist. I practiced for about 40 years around the city and also in the near western suburb. Over the years, we had a lot of issues and things that we were fighting, battle that we were fighting, and thought that we had won some of them, but I'm not so sure. They said as the world turns, sometimes we see the same thing keep coming back, but it's I guess it's life, and we are going to have to deal with things that are repetitive, things that do recur, and hopefully we can figure out better ways to love each other, care for one another, and to take care of each other, because I think those are some important qualities that help to make life a lot better. And so, like I said, so about 40 years of practicing internal medicine. I retired in 2019, and I'm still interested in healing the community as much as I can, not through prescriptions, but through teaching and through helping people to learn what it is that they can do for themselves, because there's some things that we need to do for ourselves.
Absolutely. Shout out to all the young people who can get a career in healthcare, and you can do it even in retirement. You can help people. So it's really a great career. I think we're all privileged to do it. So thank you for your comments. We'll tee it up to Dr. Pete let him share his introduction.
All right, I'm Dr. Pete Thomas, internal medicine physician, medical director at Howard Brown Health. I'm passionate about men's health, HIV medicine, and overall community health. And I'm looking forward to sharing with our illustrious panel here, and hopefully the community can get some positive things to move toward their health.
100%. Dr. Graham, it's your time.
Appreciate that. I'm a retired physician too, like Dr. Miller and Dr. Mason. I spent about 30 years in the Western suburbs and joined the congressman in his office. And let me tell you, you get a chance to see healthcare from a policy perspective instead of in your office. And it really changed my ideas about public health and public policy. It's a real honor to be here on this panel and to work with my colleagues.
Thank you so much. And it looks like we have a guest, Princess Shaw. If you can unmute yourself and introduce yourself, we're just sharing who we are and why we're here.
No, thank you guys for having me. My name is Princess Shaw. I'm a third-generation Lawndalian, raising fourth-generation Lawndalians. So that's the Lawndale community on the west side. And I'm just here today to learn from all of this wealth of knowledge that's on this panel here. And Miss Nikki, as well as the congressman, was nice enough to invite me out today to, just speak on a few things and join you guys in conversation.
Thank you so much, Princess. And before I hand the mic back to Nikki, I'm going to let the congressman share his introductory comments as well.
Well, let me just say, if I was at a poker game, I'd say we got a full house, but it's so good to see so many and all of us on. It's a very exciting time for those of us here in Washington, especially this week, because we are preparing for very serious debates that will take place surrounding the president's budget. And so we're going to be doing a number of markups this week. And of course, we're in preparation for those. Of course, these are also just serious times because the decisions that will get made will determine what the budget will look like for the federal government for the next year. And the impact will be probably for the next decade. And we know that there are some serious proposals that, if all implemented, will cut the heart out of healthcare for millions of people in the United States of America. And notwithstanding that, I visited a new medical school on Friday that is going to be opening at 400 South Jefferson. The building is being prepared. They're making $100 million investment in the building, with the activity being proposed to generate about $2 billion worth of work and other activity over the next decade. So there are some exciting things happening. There are some courageous people. It's a private business, a private group. There are courageous people willing to invest in our city. And let's get going. We're a little late and we're delighted.
All right, want to say hey to Alderman Pat Dow, who is here with us. Also want to say hey to President Steele, who is here with us just as well. I want to say hey to Engine Company number 92 and 121, who are also here with us just as well. I want to say hi to the guys over in the garage. Do not want to forget them, because they gather to make sure that they can get this great information. And we definitely want to say hey to our team over at the Core Center. Don't want to miss our Core Center people while they are there. Also, on this evening, at the stroke of a pen under the Biden administration, with our very own congressman, that's Congressman Daniel K. Davis, and a number of his additional colleagues, they were courageous enough to find about $430 million to be able to help the citizens of our great states. And with that being said, we want to have a conversation about mold. There are so many people who have been affected by floods and things with the rain that happened over a few years ago, and they've never been able to really recover. And this is why this funding was found to actually assist those families who are suffering from this issue. Well, now, when we talk about mold, just how serious is mold? Let's talk to the doctors about what mold can actually do and how it can harm and hinder you. I guess we'll start with you, Dr. Pete, or Tony. One of you guys can tell us about mold and what it does. And then I know you guys will take it from there.
Well, I'll just start by saying, essentially, mold, the exposure to mold is like any other toxin that your body comes in contact with. And what happens is your body mounts an immune response to that, which is what actually causes the person to have either allergic skin reactions or pulmonary or breathing problems. It's your immune system's response to the exposure to the toxin and its ability to protect you, but at the same time, that protection over time can cause damage to that particular organ system. So if it's skin, it can cause inflammation of that skin. If it's lungs, it can cause your lungs to become scarred as a result of the immune response. And as a result of the scarring, what happens is the lung function goes down, which means it does not take in oxygen and expel CO2 or carbon dioxide as well. So that's a start. I don't know if any one of my colleagues want to pick up from there.
I'll just tee up the idea that it's kind of like something that hangs out in damp places. And if you think about, I remember when I used to be in real estate, we would always look for evidence of mold in the homes because, you don't want to spend all this money on that type of investment and have a problem like that. And there are certain communities on the south side of Chicago, south suburbs, that have water issues. And if you buy a house in that situation, you put your family at risk. We talk about inflammation a lot in this forum, in other forums, because we know inflammation is one of the leading causes of chronic disease. So if you, as Brother Pete has suggested, if it's a toxin to your body's going to get inflamed. And not only will it cause inflammation that can then lead to many chronic diseases, even beyond your lungs, your immune system is kind of overstimulated so if you live in a home with mold, as an example, you're going to constantly overstimulate your immune system, and that's going to really upset your body. And it's like an overload. So if we get periodic exposure to toxins, our body can deal with that quite well. But particularly in communities of color where they may be overexposed, it's going to cause huge problems. And so if you already have asthma, it's going to get worse. If you have COPD, which is bronchitis and emphysema, it's going to get worse. And some of the symptoms that you feel when you have this overstimulation is you're tired because your immune system is working overtime. You may have things like brain fog as well, and a lot of congestion. So a lot of times the doctor's treating you for your sinus infection, and you're like, why is the sinus infection not getting better? The doctor's treating you for that chronic cough, and you're like, why is the cough not getting better? And you're wondering why you're having muscle aches and things like that. So your entire body, because it's inflammation, will be impacted. And if you're at high risk because you have asthma, autoimmune diseases, and things like that, you're going to feel worse. So it's really important when you have something like this that you make sure your doctor's aware, and then you need to be tested. There are some things that we can do. We can test inflammatory markers, and there are other tests that can allow you to find out if your body has been exposed. And that's going to be really important to do if you are not feeling well, particularly if you're not feeling well and you're not sure why you're not feeling well. And I think our conventional health system is not always attuned to these types of things. They tend to focus on big picture things we think about. And then when they don't see answers, they don't necessarily think outside the box. So this is one of those think outside the box moments where you need to say, well, if we don't find anything, what else could it be? And mold should be high on the list.
Yeah, I want to throw out a question again to the doctors. What kinds of environment causes mold? I mean, that might help people better understand it if they know what kind of environment. They usually talk about, when flooding occurs, if you have a leaky roof and you get water in the house. Can you describe the conditions that causes mold? Because people may be in an environment where there's mold and not actually know it. And because what we're talking about is something at a point where somebody has some symptoms that have probably lingered for a while. And they don't know why they're sneezing or coughing and these other things are happening. And they maybe think it's just allergy. So can you give people an idea of the environment and conditions that causes mold so people may relate it to some of the symptoms they're having?
Well, I can tell you one example. My daughter, who actually just finished college in DC at Howard, she her apartment, she had some damp clothes in her apartment, but all the windows were closed. And so those damp clothes, just the damp clothes by itself in an enclosed environment, by the time she got back to her apartment, because she had came home for Christmas, by the time she got back home to her apartment, this was a matter of maybe 2 weeks that it was mold all over the kitchen walls, all over it was like, it was huge. And so it doesn't take a lot, and doesn't, and not to take any burden off of landlords, but I think it's important that landlords educate their renters to say, hey, make sure that if you're not going to be at your place for an extended time period, don't leave any damp clothes around. Make sure you crack the window. But I know, so DC has some rodent issues, so nobody trying to leave a cracked window anywhere in DC. Chicago has their share too, but I'm serious. I've never seen rats the way I've seen in DC. Jesus, but that's neither here nor there. That's a topic for another day. But this one, so it doesn't take a lot. Just some damp clothes that my daughter did not put into the dryer, and has had it on her on the kitchen floor, made a big mold explosion. So just moisture that cannot that there's in a enclosed space is all you need.
Well, I think one of the things that we know is that environmental health is a big part and a major part of health. And one of the reasons we're having this discussion is the fact that Chicago, and especially the west area of Chicago, experienced some serious flooding over the past 2 or 3 years during the 23 and 24. And as a result of that, hundreds of people's basements flooded. And there have been millions of dollars, quite frankly, already spent in terms of some remediation in response to that. But one of the reasons that we asked and invited Ms. Shaw to be on and talk with us tonight is because she is what we call a community activist, an engaged person. And she got engaged with the whole business of not just looking at responding immediately to the flood, but what can you do long range that might make sure, and the city has been very fortunate as a result of tremendous activism on the part of the citizenry, on the part of the aldermen, everybody got engaged in one way or the other. And now the city of Chicago is following up and following through and actually have these resources that are designed to try and look at what's been causing the flooding to take place. And so there's infrastructure, activity, but also alerting people and helping people know that they really need to get out of or not allow these conditions to linger in their basements and in their homes. So the city does have this grant from the Department of Housing and Urban Development to work on it. So Princess just happened to be in my office the other day and we were talking. So could you share with the physicians and with our audience the activity that you've come into contact with and been engaged with that brought us to this point?
Sure, Congressman. I think you hit it right on the head. We have quite a few seniors that are affected with mold in their basement. It started off with the flooding from 2023. It started off maybe 3-4 feet up the wall. And some of these homes right now are outrageously engulfed with mold. To Dr. Pete's point, 2 weeks period time. And when what was it, your daughter or came back home, it was like pow, right? So what ended up happening is that you have a lot of what's that? Yeah, thank you. What happens is you have a lot of seniors that are living like this. They are under the impression that if you use bleach, this will kill the mold, which we have found out through our advocacy is the furthest thing from the truth. It only hides it temporarily and appears that it's not there. So we have been tirelessly trying to figure out how to get more. That's why I'm on the call. Get more medical involvement and helping the seniors to understand, because to your point, a lot of them have been having brain fog when it comes to finding documentation to be able to fill out these documents that needs to go to the city in order to help them with a specific program that the city put out there. There's been a lot of congestion, a lot of inflammation. I've had several seniors come to me where they're having weaknesses, and when you were just talking, it's like, wow, all of this was just hitting on. When they come in, they're always out of breath, they're tired. Some of them have asthma, some of them don't. But to your point, some of them have underlying medical conditions outside of asthma. And so all of this, exactly what you guys just spoke upon, is happening. And so I'm just trying to see how do we get the medical field more involved, because it is 2 years later. Some of these conditions are very bad, but how do we get them more involved with being more intentional with helping these seniors, because they've been living in this. They have nowhere else to go. This is, my organization, Light Up Lawndale. We're a volunteer basis with the West Side Long-Term Recovery Group. And we've been volunteering, going out sometimes, even removing the walls just to get the mold out of the home, because it's just that bad. And I know several homes, even to this point now, are all the way up to the ceiling in the basement and heading onto the first floor. So my thing is, I don't go into the basements, but I ask them to send us pictures, and they're horrified. And so I'm just trying to see what we can do from a medical standpoint until we're able to get to what the congressman is telling us about the additional funding to help. And we may even need additional funding as well, because it's really that bad. I have not seen one estimate under $30,000 that needs to be done in a majority of these basements.
I just and thank you so much for that, but I want to just ask a question of my colleagues to help. I'm a urologist, so I didn't have to do much with mold, but I will ask the question: when we talk about mold, what we're talking about, I know we mentioned it earlier, but it's not a bacteria. It's different. and it grows in better in certain kinds of conditions. And the reason it's causing the problem is because, and I'll again defer to them, that it's the inflammatory response. In other words, the body's trying to figure out what the devil is this, trying to fight it, and then doesn't have the tools that it needs to fight it. So perhaps and if I had, and I would also suggest that the Chicago Department of Public Health and the other health agencies should be involved, because should be people there along with the Department of Buildings to help with understanding the issues and the issue around what else can be done to begin to get rid of the mold. It's not a bacteria. It's not something you can use antibiotics on. And I'll leave it right there, and perhaps have one of my more internal medicine docs talk about this, because and the question is how does it get to be a problem? How do you begin to even think about trying to get rid of it? And lastly, what can you do once you have it to really treat yourself, or should be treating yourself?
So I'll just maybe tee this up by saying that, when I think about bacteria, I think about, something that's spread via contact or contaminated water or air droplets, leading to infections and things like that, treated with antibiotics. I also think about viruses as airborne, from, direct contact, etc. Even worse, it can hijack your immune system, like flu, COVID, HIV, and cause a lot of harm. And, we treat those mostly with supportive care, which is a little frustrating. That's why when a person comes in with a cold, they're like, "Doc, give me something." And we can treat symptoms, but most viruses don't respond to medicine. And even some viruses that we do have medicine for, it's not the best. It doesn't work as well, because when you kill viruses, they're so similar to us, you may kill us. So they don't really have great medicine for that. Fungus, I think of as also something that can spread through the air. They have these spores that can, spread via the air. But again, they thrive. Those spores thrive in damp environments. As I mentioned earlier, they can, when you're exposed, you can have allergies to them. You can have, inflammation that occurs, and it tends to be mostly on surfaces, on the walls, on the floors. You'll see the water was on the floor too long, and then it creeps up into the drywall. And once it gets into the drywall, you just got to remove the drywall. You can't spray something on it and expect that to do the job. So you have to, once it's in there, and because spores are very resilient, they can last through anything. So the most important thing, as opposed to viruses and bacteria, where you kind of, treat symptoms for viruses and you use antibiotics for bacteria. For mold, you're talking about maybe remove whatever the mold is. It's a toxin, as Dr. Pete suggested, and you have to remove that toxin from your body. When I did my functional medicine training, one of the things we talked about was, detoxifying the body at times. And so you hear about things like charcoal. People get activated charcoal, and they get that to kind of remove stuff from your body. There's something called glutathione. That's also something that kind of detoxifies you. So I think at the end of the day, it's mostly about, it's not really an infectious person spread like the viruses and bacteria. It's more of a environmental exposure, and that's the distinction. The good news is that if you identify it, it's pretty easy to eliminate. And as described by our guests, once our seniors and our kids and others are exposed, the first key is to remove the exposure, and then you can give the body time to heal. And that's why when I talk about nutrition and wellness, imagine a body that is not in good shape health-wise, which you tend to see in communities of color because of many factors. So they're going to struggle more than a person who is in a healthier body. So one of the things you always want to remember is optimize your body as much as possible so that when you're exposed, you can then be in a better position to recover in a way that's going to allow you to save your life and not be negatively impacted by these modes.
Yeah, I want to say something. I'm going to take a slightly different approach, because some of the things that happen when you have been exposed to mold are similar to what happens when you get the flu or you get a cold, or there are other things that it could be. It doesn't have to be exposure to mold. So it's really not a medical or a clinical problem. It's a housing problem and a housing stock problem. So there's not much that healthcare or public health can do, but there probably is an opportunity for the city and their public health department to work with the housing department, because they're responsible for the housing stock in the city of Chicago. They can do something, and they may have some funding to support mold remediation, because ultimately, if you don't get rid of the mold, you're going to continue to have the problem. So you really don't need a doctor to go in the house and either diagnose the problem or tell you what the problem is. You need somebody that's going to deal with the problem. And so part of the message, I guess, for the listening audience is really, if you have a basement and it's flooded, and it typically floods, and you can see the flood lines and you can see some other things, there's a possibility that you have mold in your house. And if you're constantly wheezing and sneezing, you may need to have the house checked to make sure that there's no mold there, and then work possibly with the city or some other agencies, or try to get somebody to remediate it. But I just want to be clear: it's not anything that a medical system can handle. What we handle is when people are sick, they go to a medical system, and they get diagnosed based upon the symptoms. So if they go to a hospital or a clinic, they're going to have the same symptoms as somebody that walked in with a cold, but the person that sees them wouldn't know that that's related possibly to the fact that there's mold in the house. It's hard to make that connection. You come in, you got the symptoms. What a doctor can do, or what somebody anywhere could do, is give you medication to help with the symptoms. But how would they know that there's mold in the house and your symptoms are really due to mold? So it's a complicated problem. But what I really think is this is work really for the housing department, probably in collaboration with the city health department, to come up with some kind of not only program but messaging to let people know the difference and encourage people to get their houses investigated if they're having these symptoms. Because if you leave, you may get some temporary relief, but if you go back, you're going to have the same problem again.
Yeah. Just to add a couple of things. One is that this is just as long as there's exposure, there's going to be inflammation. And so one way or the other, either you have to be removed, or the agent, the spore, is going to have to be removed from your environment. So as long as that spore is there and you're there, then your body is going to respond in an inflammatory way, and the body ultimately get overstimulated, and the immune system does, and then we see the results of injury to various areas. Inflammation in your body causes injuries to other tissue that was at one point a normal tissue. Now, in terms of what medical people do and can do, and this is one of the things why it's important to have a primary care doc. I think that the primary care doc can become aware, that this is not a cold that's going on for months and months and months, because again, the symptoms are similar, but having someone who understands that this person and this individual who's having these symptoms, that is continuous over this long period of time, that there's something else going on that need to have a more serious look at, and can help the person to get in terms of getting some direction with that. But I think in terms of, as you said, Joe, this is an environmental problem, and the environment has to be cleaned up. These spores are not going to disappear on their own. Time will not just wipe them away. So it has to be, if it's in the wall, you're gonna have to change that wall. You're gonna have to take part of the wall down and put up another wall that is not infested. And also, if there's because I mean, you know, you can see this in other situations where there's leaky faucet, leaky toilets, and you know, if you have tile around, it's on the wall, you'll see these lines and discoloration, and that's mold. It causes various different colors to develop. And so when you so these are things that the individual can look at and know that there's something, have an idea of what kind of thing that may be going on, and then you know, report this and make certain that you know, that individual has to, you know, again, remove themselves as much as possible. That's a difficult thing. You just can't, you know, go out of leave your house and find another place to live. Um, but it does. But the fact that it does take money to replace walls, and oftentimes in community where the resources are not plentiful, that becomes an issue, which we have an economic issue that becomes a medical issue and lead to more medical problems.
Yeah, I'll just accumulate everything my colleague said, and just to say, typically what I can do as a primary care doc is facilitate for the patient to see a case manager to help them navigate resources available, either to change apartments, or I can write a letter to say they have X, Y, and Z condition. Please consider them for another safer place for them to live if they live in an apartment. Also, we can prescribe medications to mitigate the immune response that our body is giving off as a result of the exposure to the mold. So typically, what we'll see patients who will have a lot of symptoms when they're at home, but they get better when they go to work. So when you ask them, do they have coughing and congestion when they go to work, and they say no, it actually gets better. And so you know that the symptomatology is coming from when they're in their apartment and things like that. So, but we can give antihistamines, we can give corticosteroids, but again, those are short term. Like my colleague said, you got to get them away from that mold from it for an extended time period. You really can't. But when you have people who have like things like asthma and COPD, you know, and you know that this is not going to be an easy process in getting them out of that place, you may have to give a low dose corticosteroid or even a low dose antihistamine just to manage their airway restriction as a result of the exposure to the mold.
Which really means that we can give kudos to our agencies, because this is actually coming through HUD, Housing and Urban Development, and the city of Chicago is implementing it through its building and housing activity, recognizing what need to be done. And that is, you need to either move from the environment that is causing the problem, or move the environment from you.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the two. So they're right on target in terms of the money that they have access to really came from housing and urban development. And so the citizenry now has the opportunity to make sure that they take advantage of it and make contact with whoever is in the remediation business, whoever can actually get the walls replaced in their homes, in their basements, and get rid of all the stuff and cast it out away from them. You know, as far as I guess my father used to say, is the East is from the West, and and get away from it, and get it away from me. Then we should be all right.
Yeah, one of the things, and this is really for you, Princess Shaw, and what I hear Congressman Davis say, you're in a unique position because you are a citizen and you're representing a group of citizens. and you can advocate in a way that people in these departments can't advocate. That you can go to them with solutions, talk about what the problem is. I mean, one of the challenges, and I think the current mayor is trying to reestablish a Department of Environment, because we don't have a Department of Environment, but we do have a Department of Housing. We do have a Department of Public Health, and maybe this is a problem to get them to work together on, because typically they work in isolation. Public
Yes.
health sees its job really as just core public health things, the things that they need to do. And that doesn't have anything to do, because people may think it doesn't have anything to do with doctors seeing patients, because that's a whole different part of the system. They may open some clinics or work with some clinics, but that's not what basic public health does. The other thing is we do have a Department of Housing whose job is exactly what we've been talking about. That's their job, to do that. They probably have funding to do that. But to get these groups talking together, that's going to require what Congressman Davis is talking about, citizens advocacy. And you have an organization that can mobilize people and make people aware not only of the problem, but get them to work together toward a solution.
Yeah, gentlemen, I just wanted to chime in and let you guys know. I think the only concern I really have is just the amount of exposure, right? So I'm not coming and saying, like, hey, I need for you doctors to solve this, right? I just want to make sure you guys are fully aware. I know you guys can't. But with the amount of exposure, we have been asking for like a respiratory specialist or something to come out. And so once we are, to Congressman's point, get this out, right? And like you're all saying, when they're not in their homes, they feel great. There's a limited amount of housing. But the question becomes, even with this amount of overexposure, I would say over, that's my word.
Mm-hmm.
Once we do get them back in a good space, in their home, in an apartment, what have you, what then, right? Because they have already had that exposure. And then on top of that, they have not been treated for it. I could tell you for a fact, I stopped going into basements because it got so bad for me where I had a cough, like you guys are saying, for 3 months. I took 3 rounds of amoxicillin to get rid of it. Right? That's how bad, just me going in. So I can only imagine what it is for a person that's constantly living there, right? And so I appreciate the congressman and as well as Nikki bringing me on, because I'm, again, thinking long term. Once we get them out that state and they are stable and safe and healthy, or getting on the road back to healthy, how do we secure and make sure that they do stay healthy, seeing that they've had, as I put in the chat here, an extensive amount of exposure for almost 2 years?
I'm going to jump in again, because I'm going to steal a line that I got from Dr. Mason. In God we trust, all others must have data. And you're talking about exposure. So how big of a problem is it? So you've talked about what's happening, but unless you can quantify the magnitude of the problem, people are not going, you're talking about general. So I'm just telling you how things get done. If you can quantify, talk about the number of people that are infected, how many people it's infected. If you can demonstrate that, you'll get media attention, you'll get government attention, you'll get other things. But if you keep telling people it's a problem, and there are a lot of people that have the problem, but if you can demonstrate the numbers are so great that this is something that requires immediate attention, you'll get the attention. But you just can't go around and say it's a problem and it's real bad and I've seen people. That's anecdotal. But what I have found, what really gets people moving, are the raw numbers. When you can show that this is affecting these many people. The city of Chicago has close to 2 million people, if not over 2 million people. I think it's larger than 2 million people. So, sometimes that a problem may affect a couple of hundred people disappears all of a sudden. But you're talking about the west side of Chicago, one neighborhood which has a smaller population. How many people have been impacted and are continuing to be impacted would really help you moving forward in terms of making an argument that this is a significant problem. Otherwise, people will listen, but you don't have anything that demonstrates there's a problem to the magnitude that you're talking about. And that's just based upon my experience.
I
So Pete,
just
oh,
want to just. Oh, I'm sorry, Nikki.
no, go ahead, Dr. Mason.
See, I take a different approach. You know, there's an old adage that says the squeaky wheel gets the oil.
Mhm.
And so the thing is, you got to raise hell. That's what has to happen. I thank God for the lady, the sister that's there in the organization, and I thank the congressman for bringing her on. And I think that's part of the starting to raise hell, because you know nothing's going to happen until somebody begins to really raise some hell about it, raise some noise about it. The Department of Public Health, what is more public in health than mold? So, you know, that needs they need to have a fire put up under their behind to get them engaged, because the more of these, and the housing department, as we've already talked about, and we've already talked about that, but it's really, you know, basically somebody to get the politicians, you know, I don't know who the aldermen are of those wards and that kind of thing, but you know, somebody needs to make sure they get on television, talk about how bad this is, come out there with a take cell phone camera video. And I mean, but there's ways to make sure that you get the attention that you desire, that you deserve. Shouldn't have to be on you, because that's what those apartments are for. If the public health is in danger, as it is with this, the public health department needs to respond. If they don't, then that organization needs to be on the 6 o'clock news at night talking about how it's not happening and the seniors that are getting sick. And I'm going to tell you something. Seniors do one thing that a lot of people don't do, and that is vote. And when you start talking about votes and start talking about people who vote on a regular basis, they will get some attention to this matter, and that's what has to happen. And all the politicians have to are sensitive to this. So I don't know. I'd be happy offline to help you get some rabble rousing done, because I love rabble rousing and raising hell, because that's what needs to happen. Pardon my
I
portage.
love it.
Well,
Yes.
well, what Dr.
Well,
Mason's talking about, if you do a
Pete, you had
compelling,
something you wanted to say, Pete?
No, I was just going to say I appreciate that from a public health perspective. That's definitely the route to go. Also, I think if individual patients, if they are having challenges, they should see their primary care physician with the specific complaint of mold exposure. And that way, that's also a way of accumulating data to support that a bunch of people in this community were having um, um, visits to their primary care or even urgent care for mold exposure. And then from that perspective, your primary care can then refer you to an occupational doctor who can do all the data testing that Joe was talking about, that can also be used as data to support the fact that there's excessive mold exposure. Because some people might say, well, these are old sick people anyway, you know, and it's like, nah, wait a minute, this person's lung function was functioning this way prior to, and then now it's functioning like this. This person was going to the doctor every 3 months, and now they're going every once a month, once a week. They're in the ER. So, and once we're documenting all of that in the chart, in the medical records, then that's also data or evidence to support that there's been foul play in terms of lack of movement in getting those people to a safe environment.
yeah, all the news
So
outlets
two
have
quick
investigative reporters. I mean, you go to investigate if you got information. I mean, you can work with somebody to put together a story. Once you have a compelling story, it's going to force people to do something. City will be embarrassed. I mean, so there are ways to do that, and you know, everybody's got a phone who's got a camera. You
Okay.
know, there are
Well,
ways to cobble together something.
we have a statement and a question. So we have a statement from Mr. Norwood, who is a contractor here in the city of Chicago. And Mr. Norwood says, we have been struggling with this issue since 2023. Mold is all over the city of Chicago. We are finally glad that some type of funding has come to the west side. However, those who are holding the funding is making sure that it's not going to the right homes that it should be in. I just want to make sure that you guys are aware. They know there's data, there's numbers. That's why the money came. But trust and believe, the ones who really need it won't get it. Well, thank you, Mr. Norwood, for sharing. Also, Stephanie says, Dr. Pete, you talked about different medications. My son, who is 12, has asthma. We had mold from the first rain. My insurance company covered, they came out and they did something called mold mitigation. They never removed the walls, but they did clean the surfaces. However, my son ended up on more steroids, gained a lot of weight, taking more medication. We've noticed now that the mold has come back from the basement to our first level in our new edifice of a townhome that we have here. Now they've come back out and they've told us that they need to tear the walls out and that the walls should be torn out in the beginning. In the meantime, my child has suffered due to this issue. Now the insurance doesn't want to pay, and I am paying to have these walls taken down. Dr. Pete, thank you for breaking it down to us about how this hinders, but we've dealt with this since 2023. Should I be concerned about my son's health status, and will he ever come off some of this medication?
Well, I'll just preface the situation by saying I'm not a pediatrician. I'm an internist. I take care of adults, but I know what a regular lung looks like and how it functions, and so I would say, yeah, you should be concerned, and you should do whatever it takes to keep your son as safe as possible. Yeah, because unfortunately, what we have in terms of medicine is only medications to mitigate the immune response to that toxin or exposure. As long as that exposure is there, your immune system is going to do what it's supposed to do, which is try to fight it off. But in the process of fighting it off, it's actually doing damage to that particular organ system. So, and then what we do is we give medications to tell the immune system to chill and to relax. But then again, like she just said, those medications also cause other problems, like it can raise your blood sugar over time, raise your blood pressure. It can cause avascular necrosis over time, which is the damage to the joints. Okay, so the medication is great in a short-term time period. It can help to save people's lives, but over long term, it's not meant for that. And so, yes, she should be concerned, which is the reason why we need a public health system that is vigorous about situations like this, particularly for our most vulnerable population. Like this woman has a lot to deal with, and she shouldn't have to worry about the health of her son in the process of trying to pay bills and eat and pay her car note and stuff like that. It's just
and
too
Dr.
much.
Pete, to your point, and Nikki brought up, I'm glad these people are speaking up, because at the end of the day, there was a total of 16,985 people that put in a FEMA application, right? And so out of that 16,985, I can tell you for myself, as well as a part of the long-term recovery group, we have been talking to 325 of those people that all have mold in their basement and trying to work tirelessly with the Department of Housing in order to be able to get these things done. But it's just such a huge lift that's going on. It's almost, it's not impossible. I'm never going to say it's impossible. It can be done, but we need more hands on deck. Like Mr. Norwood is saying, like, we got to figure a way. And like I said, I appreciate you guys being very candid and talking through this with us. But like I said, I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, to Mr. Harrington, to Dr. Harrington's point, listen, we have the numbers, we have the data. All of this stuff, all this stuff is clear and present. But it's just like, again, I'm just coming to you guys on you guys' mercy, like, hey, can someone have this conversation with the Department of Health? Because I have spoken with them on several occasions, like, hey, we have something for lead abatement, but all of the stuff is for after the fact. It's nothing, hey, here's what we have. And even to the point with the doctors, the seniors, they're going to their doctors like, hey, this is something regular. I just need to go get this done. They're not looking at the aspect, maybe because of the brain fog or the weakness, like, oh, I'm just getting old. And that's what some of them have told me. But it would be really great to be able to have, I don't know what constitutes to have an epidemic, something like how the COVID happened. How do we ring that alarm to say, hey, it's too many people that would be affected in this particular area and they all have mold? How do we ring that alarm, Dr. Terry, to your point, and bring that awareness for our medical staff, right? Because they're just seeing it, oh, it's the cold season. It's just one of those things, just go home. It'll eventually kind of, work itself out. So I, again, I appreciate everyone's here. And again, it's not to say anyone's a bad person, but we have climate change that is constantly happening. And how do we get ahead of it and start making these changes that need to be changed? Because the system is not going to work like it's been working before.
Well, want to say hello to Yolanda Williams that's here. She says good evening to everyone. Laura Leon is here. And Laura Leon says good evening to everyone just as well. Karen says, listen, getting the Department of Public Health in, well, let me tell you, if we call the Department of Public Health and the Department of Buildings, they will have us all in court and out of our homes that we are paying for. There's an attack on Black people, and we really need to pay attention. I'm a professional. I am a professor at one of our local universities here in Chicago. And I just want to let you know there's an attack against Black people. Thank you, Karen, for sharing that just as well. Well, of course, you guys hate to hear me say this. I know you hate to hear me say it, but it's our time. Just want to remind you that on next week, come back and make sure that you're here with our special guest, Dr. Nzike. She's coming back, and she'll be back on next Monday. And she'll be another one of the members on Couch Conversations. Well, as always, we're going to go around and ask your until next Mondays. Well, Doug, you're up. What's your until next Monday?
So, Nick Evans,
It sounds like you're muted, Doug.
No, I think I should be good now. Well, I was thinking that you need to help your doctor make the diagnosis. Because lots of people are going to go to that doctor and say, I've got a runny nose, a sore throat, I'm wheezing, I'm coughing. But if you can come in with a newspaper article, something on the internet says, this is where I live, this is where I was flooded, or pictures from your cell phone that you got mold on the wall, that helps them diagnose you. And that helps with what Dr. Mason said about building the case. What's going on in the community, how bad it is, how severe it is, where it is, what the numbers are to get people moving. So if you can bring something to that office, pick it on your cell phone, newspaper article that helps build the case for mold, you'll get to the diagnosis and treatment quicker and help the community.
Outstanding, Doug. Thank you so much. Well, this old canine nose of mine can smell anything a mile away. And if I come in your house, my asthma triggers if you have mold. So this old canine nose is usually on top of it. So, Dr. Miller, you're until next Monday.
Yeah, it's going to take a coming together within the community and to try to deal with this problem, because it's going to take multiple aspects. It's going to take someone who does like Ms. Shaw, but she's going to need some assistance. And it's going to take some help, medical people who can quantify the disease, because just to say that you have a problem, I'm coughing and sneezing, it doesn't have a big impact. But if you have had diagnostic studies to show that now you're beginning to get worsening respiratory functioning in a significant number of people, and that over a period of time, that these things are going to be it's going to cost money eventually to take care of this person who is having these issues now. And I still believe that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If we can prevent these problems, then we don't have to pay a bigger load at the end of the day. And so it's going to take, so I think that we really need to get, I've been hearing and talking and hearing people talk about this issue on the West Side for almost 2 years. But we gotta make certain that it get more serious attention. People are giving it attention, but that serious attention that calls an action, something that calls a reaction to the problem in such a way that there's movement, there's change, and there's resolution.
Outstanding, Dr. Miller. Outstanding. Well, Doug says share the information with your doctor. Dr. Miller says let's come together to make real change. Well, Dr. Mason, what's your until next Monday?
My text in my heart and in my head, my next month until next Monday says, Nikki, if she'll give you her number and what have you, because I'd like to talk with her and see what kind of hell we can raise. And we got the congressman sitting right here. I'm not trying to get him in anything, but ain't no cavalry coming. So we can just forget that. and it's only going to be us doing what we need to do. And I need to get the other thing I need to get are all the aldermen of those affected wards that's going on, and whether or not they've been contacted. I don't know, and I'd love to have a conversation with the young lady. You get the number, and I will be happy to speak with her tomorrow and see what we can do, because it's like Celia, and I said it last week. The thing is, what us gonna do? What us gonna do? And so we've got to find the people with a listening ear and who have some resources, and make sure, not saying that it hasn't been done. I'm not saying in any way that what you guys have done or been doing is not adequate. It's just that sometimes you need a bit more squeak in that wheel to get the oil. And I'm willing to help do that.
Nikki, you're muted. You're muted,
All right.
Nikki.
So Doug says, let's share information with your doctors. Dr. Miller says, let's come together for real movement. Dr. Mason says, let's raise some HE double hockey sticks. That's what he said. Let's raise it. Well, Dr. Hampton, what's your thoughts?
Mine are very similar. I just did a letter for a patient on Friday for a similar type of problem, and what this
Lost you.
I
Frozen.
think
You froze.
Tony may be frozen. Well,
That's-
while we're waiting on Tony to unfreeze, Joe, what's your until next Monday?
Well, my until next Monday is going to pick up where we started. I'm a product of the civil rights movement. That's where I came of age during the civil rights movement, and had a chance to work on the West Side in my early 20s, and actually had a chance to work with the Black Panthers, whose office was on the West Side on Madison Avenue. And one of the things that people would proudly say, and it's a Portuguese phrase, "A lunta continua." The struggle continues. Some of what we're talking about is not new. These are age-old problems. The same groups that have been on the bottom are still on the bottom, struggling to move forward. But I want to end with a quote from Margaret Mead, which always gives me some hope, and it speaks to what we've been talking about. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So, like Dr. Mason, this is up to us.
Well, Doug says, share the information with your doctor. Dr. Miller says, let's come together for real change. Dr. Mason says, let's raise some HE double hockey sticks. And Joe says he's in agreement with them. Well, Pete, what's your until next Monday?
Well, I think I'm gonna take off where my colleague Dr. Hampton was probably going, and that is, we are supposed to be, as physicians, advocates for our patients. And if you're not advocating, if your patient is telling you one thing and you're telling them another thing, go see another doctor. So your job is to 90% of what we diagnose is what our patients tell us. So if they say, I feel worse when I'm at my house, that's the key. There's something in the house that's not healthy for our patients. And then I'll just leave you with a quote from I think a great historian and civil rights advocate. And he said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. So we have to use all of our resources, including our physicians, including our public health infrastructure, including our political advocates, and we have to advocate for change for the health of our community.
That was Frederick Douglass.
Yes,
Frederick Douglass. That was our Frederick Douglass.
Yes, it was. Yes, it is.
He was one of us, Frederick Douglass.
Yes,
That's
he
his
is
quote.
one of us.
Right.
Outstanding. Want to make sure that to our viewers and our listeners, make sure that you grab and Look at that great read that Dr. Thomas put in the feed for you. He put a great link there for you to get more information in reference to what is there. Well, Princess, we usually ask if you would share like a little 15-second elevator pitch to our viewers of what do you want them to think about until next Monday. Go right ahead.
I would tell them what I would want them to think about is to actually go into their basements and see if they have mold. Make sure they are going down there safely with the respiratory mask on, and then making sure they get in contact with someone, whether it be their doctor, whether it be the congressman's office, because I know he has Ms. Logan over there that does an excellent job with making sure that people are helped when it comes to this aspect, and then just letting their alderman know, I have mold, I need help. That would be my 15 seconds, and telling the gentleman here, thank you for taking the time out to listen and actually have some real resolution. And I will be making sure that I take it back to the cities that I am helping to make sure that we start this process to quantify something that can definitely, hopefully, bring them help.
Outstanding. Well, one of the things that the congressman talks about all the time that's done in Congress is advocating. So we wanted to make sure that our doctors were made aware that this funding is now here. And if you have patients that are in these centralized areas, here is another resource to aid and help your patient, to give them another resource to help them move along in this process for better health. As he always teaches us, true wealth is your health. And it's one of the reasons why we're here every Monday night, making sure that we share this information with our viewers. Well, Congressman, as always, take us home.
Well, I attended church yesterday at the Broadview Baptist Church, and the young minister there who preached a great sermon made use of Frederick Douglass a number of times. And so I said to him after he was done, and that was the last thing he quoted before he got to the resurrection, but you always have to, kind of end there. But I told him I'll be back, that he was doing some of my favorite stuff. But Douglas also said that if you find the level of oppression that a people will accept, that is exactly what they will get. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Our community has responded greatly to the flooding that occurred. We brought over $100 million that has already been spent that came from FEMA. The city of Chicago has not been sitting on its hands, because if it had, it wouldn't have the 400 million. They don't just drop it on you. you have to do something to get it. Even as Joe Biden was, they didn't just drop it down. There's been aldermen who are doing great work, other community activists, community organizations. Steve Robinson, Northwest Austin Council, Westside Health Authority, just a whole bunch of folks. But it takes all of us doing whatever it is that we do. And I've never known anybody to do enough. I've never known enough. And of course, if the problems had been solved, we wouldn't have any work left to do. So we just got to keep working, keep organizing, keep activating, keep motivating, keep stimulating, keep using all the knowledge that we can get our hands on and we can wrap our brains around, and keep believing that when we put all of those forces together, then the changes that we're seeking will come. And we just have to believe it. We can achieve it. So let me thank all of you for being a part. I've got a meeting governor at 7:30 in the morning. We are an hour ahead. So it's time for us to get out of here and go to bed. I got up 6 o'clock in Chicago this morning. So have a good night. See you all next week.
Congressman, can I share one quick thing?
Yeah.
Our office believes in real news. We believe in real facts. So I want to make sure that everyone understands, even though there's a different president in office right now, this funding came from the stroke of Danny Davis's pen, along with his colleagues under the Biden administration. So don't be fooled 3 months down the line when someone says that they've done it, because it did not happen that way. This money came a different way. You guys have a great evening. Bye now.
Thank you.
You have to plant seeds. Then the plants begin to grow.
There you go.
Have a good night.